Ground Battles has no shortage of maps. Most of these are based off real-life locations in battlegrounds of wars fought in history, such as Kursk, which became Fire Arc, Second Battle of El Alamein, and Stalingrad. There are also maps that were built for gameplay that resemble real-life places somewhere without being actual places like Frozen Pass, Sun City, and Cargo Port. And there's a special category of maps that were taken from April Fool's events and put into the map rotation, like Spaceport and Middle East. Now, a new Ground Forces map is coming, that is Pradesh, and I have no opinion on it just yet. However, throughout my time playing tanks, I've heard one feedback from players about the maps in ground battles. They are awful to some degree. So today we're going to take a look at War Thunder Ground Forces maps and sort them into 5 categories of the reasons why they are considered awful. I'll be only looking at Ground Forces maps at the moment because aircraft maps are all the same flavor with a different skin, except for the additional EC maps in top tier. There are certain maps in the game where it's both too large and too small. By that, I mean the overall allowable play area is large, but the objectives are bunched together in a very small area. Wallonia and its alternate form Ardennes is probably the best example of this, having a large flanking area but the objectives are only concentrated on the center of the map. This is awful because ground forces are a capture zone focused map. Flanking without contending objective zones means you're setting your team up for failure in the long run. Also opens up a lot of avenues for spawn camping. The next biggest perpetrator of this is Hurtgen Forest, and maps like Carpathians, Fulda, Vietnam, Red Desert, and everyone's favorite map, Volokholamsk. Speaking of spawn camping, there are maps that allow you to spawn camp at a certain part of the map far from the actual spawn. And some maps allow you to spawn camp from your own spawn. And for some reason, Mozdok fits the bill for both criteria. The regular 3 cap Mozdok variant allows the team spawning north to camp south spawn by merely capping the C point on their side of the map. Long Mozdok cuts the effort entirely by allowing you to shoot at the other spawn from your own spawn. I guess Gaijin never accounted for the possibility of automatic laser rangefinder adjustment, but even then, did Gaijin never realize how potent ATGMs can be? Let alone APFSDS rounds? I guess long sightlines are Gaijin's favorite map feature, as we'll see later. The first time we saw this issue was on Karelia, which is why that map got revamped massively. It's also a problem in maps like Sands of Sinai, Berlin, Arrow Sea, Ash River, Middle East, Poland, Normandy, and Port Novorossiysk. None of these maps require any objectives taken to start spawn camp. 3 recent map additions in War Thunder are Sun City, Breslau, and Cargo Port. What do they all have in common? Long sight lines stretching from one end of the map to another. It got so bad, Breslau was temporarily removed from rotation to fix it. This is different from spawn camps because they don't necessarily extend into the opposing team spawn, like in Advance of the Rhine and American Desert. This becomes a problem because long sightlines just promote camping. Ironically, the middle section of Ardennes addresses the issue to a degree by placing obstructive rubble to prevent your line of sight reaching the cap zone on the other side of the map. Aside from these 3, maps like Finland, 38th Parallel, and the long version of Port Novorossiysk also suffer from this to some degree. Wide maps are bad, open maps are awful, and spawn camping maps are just a pain. But the more insidious and less addressed problem in map design is terrain that won't let you move as freely as you wish. It may be a map with a lot of uneven and sloping terrain like Volokholamsk, or a map with a lot of shallow water to wade through like Vietnam, or it can just be a map that has a lot of weird obstacles like Italy, now known as Campania. While I think of some of these are just characteristic of the nature of the area and the map like Vietnam's waters, Campania's dead tank hulls just provide an artificial obstacle that prevent proper movement through the map. Thankfully, they removed the ones in Normandy, but the ones in Berlin and Campania remain. Frozen Pass wouldn't be that bad except for the drastic incline by the tunnel capture zone. Kuban is also notorious for this, but at least the west is pretty flat for the most part. And finally, we come to maps that were so poorly designed that there's really just no single problem that can be done to improve it. I'm sure the map that comes to mind when I say it is Port Novorossik's domination setup. It has every problem I've listed above except perhaps for it being too large. It allows you to spawn camp in 2 points, crazy long sightlines, and the rubble, cramped streets, and train cars prevent you from moving as much as you want. I can say that Port Novo is irredeemable, made worse by the fact that you can spawn a KA-50 and have direct line of sight to the enemy spawn because the helipad is near open sea direct east of the enemy spawn. Another one of these maps is 38th Parallel. It has one spot that you can camp to shoot at tanks moving out of their spawn across the map. It also has crazy long sightlines, and the river runs through the center of the map. Runners-up for these broken maps are Italy, European Province, and Moscow. Gaijin should really add more map bans. One is simply never enough for the amount of bad maps that we have to grind through. I've pointed out bad maps, but truly to encapsulate why I made this video, I'll also point out good maps in War Thunder. By good, I mean it's the least offensive when it comes to the problems I've listed above, and a lot of its problems are workable compared to others. My top 5 maps for War Thunder would be Abandoned Factory at number 5. Its problems are just all the players rushing top. There are no direct sightlines between spawns, and cap zones are pretty much obstructed from view. The obstacles are kept to a minimum, and it's easily one of my favorite maps to run. I've loved this map ever since they added it during the Japanese Tanks update. At number 4, we have Jungle. While the hill on the map center can be annoying if the enemy has it, it can easily be avoided by just going east side. They also block access to the ridge at east so you don't see the entire map when you climb it. Number 3, I'd probably go for Tunisia. Every cap point is a different experience, and while mid can be a snipe fest, it's mostly contained to mid and you get a town for close quarters combat and the bridge at the other end for mid-range combat. Number 2 is Stalingrad. I don't think I've ever been mad at the map at any point I've lost in it. It takes a decent amount of effort to start spawn camping either side, and it's a pretty compact map with a lot of cover that aren't obstacles to movement. And for my top 1 favorite map, Advance to the Rhine. I just love that map. Great cover, a lot of the spots to hide from helicopters, very difficult to spawn camp closed off spawns. It just makes for good gameplay in my experience. So what is the solution for bad maps? A lot of these maps aren't bad maps inherently. They're bad because they were developed for War Thunder as it was in 2016. Normandy and Poland aren't inherently bad. They become bad because the camp spots that are near useless to World War II tanks become annoying when you're facing tanks with APFSDS rounds and automatic adjusting rangefinders. Personally, I think map tiering should be a thing in the game. Maps that aren't suitable for top tier like Poland and Carpathians should remain at low tier, and maps that aren't suitable for low tier like Maginot Line and Fulda should remain at top tier. However, maps like Port Novo just aren't workable anymore, and it's better that that map should be removed. But in the interim, if that's too complicated, might as well just give us more map bans to allow us to tailor our experience to what we are playing. In my opinion, premium players should have at least 3 map bans, and non-premium players should have 1 map ban. Maps are an important part of the War Thunder experience because that is 1/3 of the grind triangle of vehicles, economy, and maps. You can get a good vehicle and an amazing economy, but it falls apart when the maps are just useless. While whether the vehicle is good or the economy is amazing is subject for debate, At least we can work on the maps and improve the experience a little bit. What do you think? Tell us what your most hated maps are in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe for more videos about War Thunder. This is the Dr. MD. Godspeed.